I want to note that making peace doesn't mean having a certain type of experience. It actually just means learning to be at peace with whatever arises in this body and mind. Yeah. And the Buddha said that we have everything we need for awakening right here in this body and mind. So this is the place for us to start to explore, to find out how we can learn to make peace. Yeah. There was a nice little quote from the suttas, and I will be quoting the suttas from time to time during this retreat and trying to relate it as much as possible to our practice. And somebody came to the Buddha and they asked him, is it possible to know or see or reach the end of the world by traveling to a place where there's no being born, no growing old, dying, passing away, or being reborn? So straight away here you can see that in ancient India people did have that concept of a place, a state perhaps, if you like, beyond old age, sickness and death. You know, a state which now we know as the state of nibbana, the unconditioned. Actually, to use the word state is not really correct because it can't even be described as a state. So he was asking the Buddha, and this particular person was walking the lengths of the earth and, you know, looking everywhere for this end of the world, so to speak. So then the Buddha says it's not possible to know or see or reach the end of the world by traveling to a place where there's no being born, growing old, dying, passing away, or being reborn. Okay, so you can't actually travel to that place. So then he says, but I also do say that there is an end of, that there is no making an end of suffering without reaching the end of the world. So actually, as long as you're in the world, so to speak, and this world of body and mind, then we're bound to suffer. And you can't end suffering without reaching the end of the world. So this is sounding a bit like a Zen koan at this point. And then the Buddha says, but I do say that it's in this fathom-long body with its perception and mind that I describe the world, its origin, its cessation, and the practice that leads to its cessation. So it's within this body and mind that we can understand how things arise, and specifically how suffering arises, how suffering ceases, and what the practice is that leads to that cessation. So we don't have to travel anywhere else. So well done to everybody for arriving here. You have already traveled the distance you needed to. The effort is all about getting onto the meditation cushion in the first place. And now you're here. The practice will just be going within ourselves and learning how to make peace with experience in a way that actually reveals the nature of experience to us. Yeah, because as long as we're fighting that experience, we're rejecting experience or trying to get onto something better, something brighter, somewhere else at some other time, we can't actually remain present and open up to what's right in front of us in the here and now. So it's a common mistake, I think, that we all make repeatedly due to our conditioning to attempt to make peace or to let go of suffering before we've really met it, before we've really encountered and learned how to handle it in a kind and gentle way. And the Buddha said in the Noble Truths of Suffering, he said that there is suffering and that suffering has to be understood. And he used this beautiful word, parinyatabam. It means to be understood completely. Pari means all around, like parameter in a sense. It's the same root. So it has to be understood all around. And how can we really understand something if we're keeping it at a distance? We can only really understand by turning toward. Yeah. But the idea of making peace is also a way toward that peace. So as much as it's a state of mind, you know, being at peace, and the deepest peace is the state of nibbana, you know, where there's no more suffering at all, the complete quelling of suffering, the complete relinquishment of acquisitions, nibbana, cessation, the end of suffering. Equally, making peace is the way to that deep peace that's available and that's accessible within this body and mind. So Thich Nhat Hanh actually had this lovely phrase. He said, peace is the path. Peace is every step. So we can't make peace by fighting the reality. We can't come to a state of peace through war with our internal world. Yeah. So we try to make an armistice with our mind, with our body, a temporary ceasefire, so that a lasting effort for peace can be made. So I wanted to talk about this in various ways during this retreat, but one little investigation or 3 questions that I'd like to present to you that you can allow to percolate in your mind as we practice are the investigative questions. What am I doing? Okay, question number 1. How is it affecting me? And where is it leading me? Yeah. So these 3 questions are very useful as a way of understanding our experience, how it arises and what we're doing with it, right? Are we making peace with it, or are we battling against it, rejecting it, tensing up, or perhaps clinging to experiences that are pleasant? We also, ironically and kind of masochistically, tend to cling to experiences which are painful as well. This is just the bizarre nature of the human mind. You know, we start to identify with our experiences, say, of loneliness or of grief and sorrow, and become the lonely person, or the person who, you know, has a certain trauma in our lives. And this identification can also stop us from noticing the changing nature of all of those experiences, you know, that experiences arise from a cause, and they do cease when those causes come to an end. So what am I doing? How is it affecting me? And this is very interesting, because the way we relate to our experience is the key. It's almost like the place that enlightenment hinges upon. Yeah, we can't always change what we experience in this moment, but we do have some influence around how we relate to that. Yeah, and the 3 right intentions are the second factor of the Noble Path, and those right intentions are intentions of non-ill will. And that's a synonym for loving kindness. Intentions of non-cruelty or non-harm, which is a synonym for compassion. And intentions of letting go, giving up, renouncing, otherwise known as making peace, right? So again, before we let go, we have to meet something. So the first step in letting go is letting be, letting things be, making peace with them, learning to come into a closer relationship with them, but a relationship which is warm and kind and compassionate, that's not cruel. How many times are we cruel to our mind? You know, we're just a little bit too harsh, a little bit too forceful, or even violent, you can say. You know, come on, breath, where have you gone? I told you to stay with my mind. Why does this breath keep disappearing? Oh, come on, mind. What's wrong with you? You've been sitting here for a good 5 minutes and you haven't even observed a single breath. You know, this is actually an intention which is a little bit harsh, a little bit cruel, rather than an encouraging attitude of, oh, it's fine, you know, you're just settling in. Take as long as you want, mind. That's fine. You know, putting the foundations in place for the effects that we're eager to see arise. So becoming more at peace, making peace with experience, also opens up this world of cause and effect. We start to see the way things arise and the way that we can influence how we incline our mind in ways that releases suffering, yeah, that softens and soothes the suffering that we experience in life. So what am I doing? How is it affecting me? And where is it leading me are the questions to ask. And the Buddha said, you know, that there are some very clear markers to know whether or not your attitudes, your ways of relating to the world are in line with the Dhamma and the Vinaya. And there's a beautiful sutta, I'll see if I can get it up here, where he says that basically talk about suffering, the origin of suffering, and the cessation of suffering is wise talk. These are the kind of subjects we should investigate and look at. And he said that if we do this, we're in line with the Dhamma. And the result of that will be that it leads to, now here it's translated as revulsion. The word is nibbida, and it actually means a kind of being repelled, but being repelled from things that cause suffering. Yeah. So if it's really the Dhamma, it leads to turning us away from things that cause suffering, whether that's objects in the outside world, but I think that's more about turning ourselves away, turning in a different direction than negative thinking, for example, or negative ways of relating that basically increase and intensify the suffering and the sense of self. Yeah. So we're turning away from the path of suffering within ourselves, and we're turning toward the path of peace. It leads to dispassion. The word is viraga, which means putting out those fires of craving, just learning to relate in a way that's much more open and spacious and that doesn't cling and grasp. It leads to cessation. So things start to disappear. This intensified sort of experience that we have, or a very solidified sense of self, starts to soften. And in its place, we just start to be able to experience the nature of things arising as they are. It leads to peace, upasama. So this is what we're wanting, right? Anything that is really the Dhamma is leading to peace. It leads to direct knowledge, abhinya, which means a kind of penetrative knowledge into the qualities of impermanence, suffering, and non-self. It leads to enlightenment and to nibbana. So in this way, you can understand that it is the Dhamma. So when we ask ourselves, how is it affecting me? Where is it leading me? We can ask this question. Is it really leading to turning away from suffering? Is it leading to releasing clinging? Is it leading to things ceasing, things fading and disappearing? Is it leading to peace, to knowledge, and to enlightenment, or not? So there's no need to judge yourself if it's not, but you can just know that you've gone off the path at some point there. And you can check out your attitudes. You can check out what you're doing, how it's affecting you, whether it's in line with those 3 right intentions or not. And also there's another kind of litmus test. Is it leading to the happiness for myself and others? Yeah. So happiness has an ethical dimension in Buddhism. When we live a virtuous life, when we speak kind words to others, kind words to ourselves, we abstain from harming, taking life. We abstain from betraying others through our sexuality. We're trustworthy. We're able to commit and to treat people with respect. Yeah, we learn to purify our minds, to gain clarity of mind through not taking intoxicants or drugs that lead to heedlessness. Yeah, and also, of course, we don't steal. But the opposite of that is we learn to live a generous life. Generous not only in terms of what we can give others materially, because we're all in different positions. I can't give you anything material, but we can be generous in terms of our time, in terms of listening to each other, in terms of maybe holding space in a non-judgmental way. These are all ways of generosity, or being involved in social services, whether that be climate activism or speaking up for minority groups, being involved in anti-racism. These are all ways of being generous, of trying to reduce the harm that we inflict upon each other in the world. And as a result, there's a certain kind of happiness that comes with that, and it's the happiness of blamelessness, the happiness of non-remorse. Yeah, the Buddha said that this is to be experienced within ourselves as blameless bliss, this lovely word, anavajja sukha. And this is the kind of happiness that we can cultivate, that we should not be afraid of developing and pursuing in our lives. So that's the other kind of test. Is what I'm doing with my body, speech, or mind, is it leading to happiness for myself and others? And you'll find that those two are so interrelated. You can't really be happy when you're harming another. You can't really expect others to be happy around you if you're, treating yourself badly. So our happiness and the happiness of others is contingent, really. They are no different. They're not separate. So that's just the little introduction, and I do want to get on to some particular themes during this retreat. So I thought that today we could talk about how to make peace with the body, and then this afternoon with the breath. Tomorrow we'll be talking about making peace with emotions and thoughts, and then on the last day talking about particular qualities that we can develop in our mind, qualities like contentment and metta and gratitude as ways of making peace, and also learning to open ourselves up to pleasure, to the pleasures of the mind, the kind of pleasures, again, that the Buddha praised and told us to cultivate, not to be afraid of. So I wanted to start with the body today, because the body is a really wonderful place to start establishing some mindfulness. And I think there are a few people here who haven't been on retreats before, so you might not have a lot of familiarity with the Buddha's teaching. But it's so simple in the sense that we can start with this body, just with how it's sitting, how it's or standing or leaning back, however you are right now, you can come into contact with that and establish awareness. This is body. This is the body sitting, yeah, and come in contact with some of the sensations in the body as well. So this is the first of what the Buddha called the Four Satipattanas. And the Satipattanas are the focuses for our mindfulness, the places where our mindfulness can get established. So the first is the body. And the Buddha said that by practicing mindfulness towards the body, we can overcome delight and discontent, fear and dread. We can endure pain, physical pain, but also harsh words, words which hurt us, just through mindfulness of the body. And of course, we can develop all the way to the stages of deep meditation, the jhanas, which he called adhicitta, the higher mind, and all the way to enlightenment, just through mindfulness of the body. Yeah, it's really amazing that we have this place to start. And I think it's one of the easiest places to start to establish our awareness. It's also very present. Obviously, as long as we're alive, we have a body. So you can always ask, how do I know that I have a body? And that will immediately bring you into contact with being embodied in this physical form. What does it feel like to be embodied? It's also a link and a gateway to the emotional world, because whatever we feel emotionally does have a corresponding physical sensation. And you'll start to become aware of this as we continue to practice. I'm sure many of you are already aware. If you're starting to feel irritation or anger to somebody, someone who's done a lot of practice of mindfulness of the body will notice it. They'll notice sensations changing. Maybe some heat will arise, or some kind of clenching in the stomach, or maybe even in the jaw, like, you might have to, your breathing might change also. You might start to find that you're breathing fairly shallowly or fairly fast. And if you can catch this at the place where it's arising in the body, you might notice that you have a chance to pause before you break out into speech or actions that could harm another. You'll also notice, if you're careful, that sometimes we think we're reacting to the object outside, but what you're actually reacting to is the unpleasant sensation in your body. Yeah, you can say, oh, well, that person or that situation caused that unpleasant sensation. But the fact is, you've landed with that sensation. And this is the place where you can actually modify your response. You can notice in that pause that you have an opportunity to relate to it in a wiser way. Yeah. Of course, when we experience unpleasant sensations, we immediately break out into kind of, I don't want this, get rid of this. How can I, move to something better? This is just the way we're programmed, and, in for good reason too. When there is a real physical threat, we might have to run. We might have to be called to action in some way. But a lot of the time, these are really only psychological threats, or even threats to our ego, our sense of self. And there's no real imminent impending danger there. So if we can just stay with that sensation of anger and notice it coming up, and actually change from an attitude of, I don't want this, but, oh, how can I care for this sensation? I'm actually hurting right now. Then we have a chance for compassion to arise. So I wanted to give some concrete sort of suggestions, meditative sort of ways to make peace with the body. And yeah, I'm aware of the time. We don't have all day, but and please, if this is too much information all at once for anybody, don't worry. You don't have to make notes. You don't have to take it all in. Just see if you can pick up anything that speaks to you, anything that's useful, and leave the rest aside. Yeah, because I do tend to overestimate sometimes how much content to to provide. So. And also, I want there to be something for everybody. So some of you are beginners, some of you are more experienced. So just see what speaks to you. So how can we make peace with our body? And the first thing I wanted to talk about is the attitude of befriending our body. So this ties into that attitude of loving kindness, the right intention of non-ill will. So we start to learn to regard our body as our friend. It sounds very simple, but so often we don't treat our body as a friend. Yeah, we treat it as a slave. Come on, body, I want to go over here, even though you're hurting, even though you might have sprained your ankle, or you're not, very energetic today. I want to go on this long walk, or I should go to the gym, or maybe go to your home gym. I don't think any of us are going out to the gym. So we tend to drag the body around almost as though it's there to perform whatever we want to do, to just serve us in whatever way we ask from time to time. And I know that I used to do that, when I was young and healthy, before getting chronically sick in Burma. I used to just expect my body to follow me in whatever I wanted to do, and even into all the local restaurants and to the taps of local drinking water. It's like, yeah, body, the locals can drink this water, why can't you? And of course, as a result, over the years, I got really quite sick. And at one point in Burma, I was so ill that I had to leave and go into Bangkok and find some medical treatment. And they did some tests. At first, they said I was making it up. But when they did the tests, they realized that there were quite a few things wrong. And they chose the harshest kind of treatment, which was a very strong dose of steroid medication. And it was actually worse than the disease itself. Maybe the strength of that medicine was also a bit too much for my fairly skinny and emaciated body. But trying to come off those steroids in the end was really difficult. And I would find that sometimes I'd just walk down the stairs of the place I was staying and thinking ahead to going out for lunch, and I just wouldn't be able to continue. I'd suddenly get this horrendous sort of palpitations and sweating, and everything was all over the place, and I'd just have to go back and rest. So for the first time, I realized, gosh, I'm used to my body doing whatever I want it to do, and right now it won't cooperate anymore. The Buddha called this the conceit of health that we have. There's also the conceit of youth, which we have when we're young. We just don't realize that this body's not always going to be the way it is right now. And it's not that we don't have something to be grateful for right now in our body. Many of us might have chronic conditions or even terminal illnesses, sicknesses in the body and mind. And mind, yes, you can have also mental illnesses, depression, bipolar. These are all sicknesses that, can come upon us at any time. But even if this is happening for you and you have some parts of the body which don't cooperate anymore, how about being grateful for the things that do work in the body and mind? Yeah. It's like if you met a friend, you wouldn't just focus on their faults. You'd also look at their qualities, their strengths. You'd find something to be grateful for in that interaction, in that friendship. We don't expect our friends to be perfect, I hope. So we respect our body and we learn to value it, not to take it for granted. Yeah. And the other way is to really listen to what your body needs. So again, in a sense, to hold space. Asking your body, is it comfortable right now? So I'm actually asking you to do that. Is your body comfortable? Is there anything you can do to make it more comfortable than it is? Are you sitting in a place or in a particular posture that you think you should be sitting in because this is a retreat? Or maybe you feel conscientious because other people are watching. Actually, no one's watching you. We're only watching ourselves most of the time, thinking about ourselves. So see if there's anything you can do. Have that extra sip of tea, put that extra cushion behind your back, or maybe stretch your legs out. It doesn't matter. If you want to turn your video off, you can do that. You can lie down. You can lie down with your video on. Sometimes that's really inspiring for others. Maybe by the end of the retreat, I'll have like a lying down meditation session or something. You'll all be flat on your backs. But even if you are, I won't hear you snore. You're all muted. And we can only unmute you if you give us permission. So don't worry about that. So ask your body what it needs. But the important part there is to listen to the response and to respect the response. If your body wants to shift, if you need a stretch, if you need to loosen up your shoulders, actually do that. Allow yourself, what you need. The other thing is the gratitude. I guess I've already covered this really. These are different nuances of the same thing really, but just being grateful for what your body does do and how it serves you day and night, even when you're asleep. You know, the breath still comes in and out, the heart still beats. It's not going to give up on you in the night. And if it does, you won't even be aware. So you'll pass on really nicely and peacefully. But I don't want to scare anyone. The heart and the breath will continue for the duration of this retreat, I'm sure. And then, yeah, lastly, I guess, the attitude of the mind we have. And in the suttas, again, I do love the Buddhist suttas. They sort of start to come alive when you read them in context and apply them to your practice. But there's this lovely sutta which talks about 3 monks. There aren't quite so many stories about nuns, but this could apply to a group of nuns or lay people too. And they lived very harmoniously together. And the phrase was that they looked at each other with kindly eyes, so that whatever one person wanted to do, the others would join in with that. And they would say to each other, why should I do what I want to do? Why don't I do what these venerables want to do instead? So if they would come back from the alms round and one would find that their robe had a tear, the other monks would make sure that they helped to mend that robe before they would then go off into solitude and practice. So like this, they said that our bodies are 3, but our minds are 1. Our bodies are different, I think it was, but our minds are 1. And they looked upon each other with kindly eyes, full of gratitude, thinking, what a great gain it is for me to live with such wonderful people. So always focusing on their positive attributes, on their qualities, and on how wonderful it is to have spiritual companions on the path. So in the same way that we can look upon dear people with kindly eyes, we can also learn to look upon our body, our inner world, with kindly eyes too. And this again creates a bit more freedom and spaciousness in our relationship to our body. We're looking at it as a friend. We're not so over-identified thinking this is mine, but there's this mind there that can give a friendly presence to the body. And in the friendly presence of the mind, the body can relax. Yeah. So many health benefits have been documented, proven, studied, assessed with mindfulness now, mindfulness of the body. Mindfulness really does, help enhance our health, our well-being. It relaxes tensions, it helps us unlock things that we've been kind of contracting around, even traumas in the mind. They are imprinted in the body quite often. And so when we come into contact with our body, we have to do so gently and with a lot of kindness and a lot of respect. So the second way of making peace with the body is to look upon ourselves, our body, with compassion. Yeah, compassion. So in Pali, the word for compassion is karuna, or anukampa, the name of our project, or daya. Daya means empathy, which is a really beautiful word. And all these words really mean feeling with, yeah. Being able to feel what you feel, but to do that in a way that's loving and kind and caring, and in a way that leads to the soothing, the easing of suffering. So compassion can be active also. It can be a sense of caring for something in a way that soothes, in a way that pacifies suffering. And it has a slightly different nuance to loving kindness, because it's connected to suffering in a different way. It has this direct relationship to the noble truth of suffering. And whereas mindfulness will sort of come in contact with experience and know experience, so mindfulness will say, okay, this is pain, for example, in my knee, or this is anxiety in my stomach, compassion will ask, how can I care for this? Yeah. So mindfulness makes contact, and then compassion asks, how can I care in a way that soothes, in a way that releases suffering, that releases clinging, releases ill will. Yeah. So it's the antidote to cruelty. It's the antidote to a kind of disregard or disrespect of the body. It's also an antidote to being too forceful or harsh with ourselves. So, for example, putting yourself in a posture which is just a bit too tight and that actually hurts your knees because you've seen it in the books or whatever, or you think that you should have your ankles on top of each other. Maybe your ankles need a bit of space. Yeah, so don't be sort of too demanding, too harsh or even cruel with the body, but be compassionate and kind. So compassion, it's important to say when we're talking about the relationship that compassion has with suffering, that compassion shouldn't make us suffer more, right? Sometimes when we feel with others, we feel with ourselves, and we generate this compassion, we can tend to move into empathetic distress if we're not careful, and the suffering becomes predominant in our mind. But the beauty of compassion is that it's actually focused on the freedom from suffering. So it can contact and learn to hold and to handle the suffering, but it also focuses on freedom from that same suffering. So it's a very happy, resourcing quality of the mind. And it's been shown actually in various trials to increase our ability to sense suffering, but without overwhelm. And it also helps to regulate positive emotions and negative emotions too, if you can really use that dichotomy. It helps to regulate our emotional response in a way that has a positive relationship in terms of a goal. So it sounds a bit sort of technical, positive relationship in terms of a goal. But I was thinking about that, and I was thinking that in this case, our goal is to make peace. So when we can focus on that intention, that freedom from suffering, making peace with experience, we can generate positive feelings in response to that. So to notice what a beautiful intention that is, you know, and to have that sort of compassion that, yes, I suffer, but I'm also moving towards a state of freedom from suffering, a state of peace. So I think it's also important with all of these methods and with compassion and loving kindness to come into contact with our experience in a gentle way. And there are a few things I just want to bring up here. So one is to notice what kind of distance you want to have from your object. So in this case, we can talk about the body as the object of our awareness, right? So if something's painful in the body, or if there's maybe some overwhelming emotion that's arising for you, is it advisable to go really close to that, to really kind of penetrate, focus on that, and you know, put all your energy into that? Or is it more resourcing, more helpful for you to have a little bit of space around it so that you feel that emotion, but you also feel other things too, and that emotion doesn't sort of swamp your awareness, flood your awareness, if you like, and take up the center stage? So this is something for you to experiment with. Sometimes that direct penetrative focus can be really helpful, especially if the mindfulness is strong. Sometimes there can be a pain in the body, especially if you're sitting for long sessions. And at first you find that there's this instinctive reaction to pull away. But when you do get a little bit closer, stage by stage, you find that the closer you're able to look and go inside it, the more you notice it opening up. And actually what you thought was solidified pain is just a kind of a whole play of different experiences and tones. So there may be heat involved, there may be pulsing or throbbing involved, there may be sharpness or dullness involved. There can be so many different sensations there. And once we look at that and kind of deconstruct what we classified as pain, the pain starts to dissolve and the whole thing becomes quite fascinating. So I'm not suggesting here that anybody goes straight for that approach, but it is up to us to find our way with these things. And this may change from time to time. So part of compassion and loving kindness is having that flexibility to respond. Yeah. And again, coming back to those three questions. What am I doing? How is this affecting me? Where is it leading me? So just ask those questions, and that will help you find the correct distance, the correct relationship to handle the experiences that we have in our body and mind. Another thing is the amount of time you want to spend with something. So shortly after we finish this talk, we'll do a guided meditation, and it will be a basic body scan. So we'll learn to come into contact with the different parts of our body. And you know, I'll be kind of leading you through it. So I'll be going at a certain pace, but if that pace doesn't suit you, please feel free to spend longer in one place or to move on from one place if you know, it's triggering something for you. And if your mind is moving into any kind of distress, then you can move on. So we don't have to stay with something for a long time. We also don't have to move on, right? If we find that our mindfulness is building in a particular area, we can stay with that and just open out. You might not want to move very much. You might want to have a more peripheral sense of the body and the mind. Yeah, and the last thing I put down was wear protective clothing. Sounds a bit crazy, but the analogy that came to my mind was like, for example, I know this lady in Oxford, and she likes to go cold water swimming. She's quite an amazing woman, tiny little skinny lady of about 64 or so, and every day she plunges into the river, not a very nice river, or into a cold lake. And she says that she does get pretty cold, but she only stays in there a short time. So I was thinking about, plunging into an ocean, for example, and how sometimes you just want to go in toe by toe, right? Or like you put your toe in first and then maybe your ankle, then maybe you go in up to your knee. So it's kind of the same when we're approaching difficult experiences in our body and mind. We might want to just go in with our toe at first and just stay there for a short time and then come out again. Or if you're like this lady, she doesn't use a wetsuit, but the rest of her group do use wetsuits. So you can put on protective clothing. You can go into the ocean wearing your wetsuit. So that would be like going in hand with kindness. Yeah. So you're not going in only with your mindfulness. You're also cloaking that mindfulness, if you like, with compassion. Yeah. And sometimes I've done this when I'm meditating. I've sort of forgotten the compassion part, and I've been sitting there thinking that I'm making peace with a difficult emotion or experience in my body. And then just realizing that, oh, I'm actually not wearing my cloak of compassion. And then just adding that extra warmth in the way that I'm aware. Sometimes I imagine it's like looking at my body and mind as though I was my own big sister, like a wiser part of myself. And I'm just infusing that awareness with a real sense of caring compassion that's really warm and nourishing. And it's incredible. Almost in an instant, you can find that the suffering, the extra suffering that we add on to experience can just disappear, just vanish, almost in an instant when you get that attitude right. Yeah, so we can experiment in these ways. And lastly, before we do some meditation, I wanted to talk about just letting things be. So that's the third of the right intentions, the nekama, the renunciation, letting be, making peace, stopping that identification, yeah, not trying to possess or control our experience, but just sitting back and letting things unfold. So this is slightly more passive. We still have that attitude of kindness and compassion, but we just take a passive seat and we just say, okay, I just make peace with you. Body, mind, be as you will. I'm not fighting anymore. So this is that beautiful word armistice, the temporary ceasefire, whilst a lasting solution for peace can be found. So at that moment, we don't worry about making peace even. We don't worry about, soothing our suffering. We just simply let it be. I'm not going to engage in the fight anymore. I'm just going to be here and let nature take its course. Whatever arises is arising due to past causes. It's the effect of things we've done in the past or ways we've treated our body, or just the aging process. It might be nothing to do. It's never a fault, right? It's not our fault. But things arise due to causes. And at this moment, we don't have any control over that. Things have just arisen. But what we can do is not add to that experience with our shoulds or shouldn'ts, don't wants or wants, likes or dislikes or identification. Yeah. And sometimes just letting things be is enough for them to kind of burn out, for them to pass away, arise and pass. So just giving things that space, making peace. So I think that's plenty for the first talk. I've gone through quite a lot. Maybe I'll just recap it so that anything that was maybe not so key can be left aside. But the main things that I mentioned this morning was that we have everything we need for awakening right here in our body and mind. And our body and mind are happening now. Yeah. Any kind of idea about how your mind felt earlier or maybe later is just imagination, it's just fantasy. The only thing we have is happening right here and now, where we are, so we don't have to travel anywhere else. And by making peace, we also bring experience close enough for us to start to understand what's going on, to start to see that cause-effect relationship, and to see how we can influence that. So I offered 3 questions for you to use during this retreat if they're helpful for you. What am I doing? How is it affecting me? And where is it leading me? Is it leading to peace? Is it leading to letting go? Is it leading to turning away from suffering? To simplicity, to contentment, and to happiness that's based on living a virtuous life. And then we talked about making peace in 3 different ways. So by befriending our experience, by giving respect, trust, gratitude, valuing our body in this case. Compassion, learning to meet suffering and care for it in a way that soothes that suffering and leads to freedom, to peace. And lastly, learning to just be with experience, to just let things be as a stepping stone to letting things go. Sometimes we don't actually have to let things go as an act. Things just do start to cease and fade when we give them space. Okay, so I think now we'll do some meditation. So please do have a little stretch if you wish. You don't have to either. So it's not that the body always needs to stretch. It might be settling down quite nicely. I won't invite a tea break at this point because it's just a half-hour meditation. You'll have a nice long time over the lunch period for tea. So nice to see people's smiling faces. So as I said, for meditation, please do pay a lot of attention, first of all, to your posture. That's the first step in becoming aware of the body. And not only knowing that your body's sitting, but checking, listening to how your body's sitting and whether there's anything you can do to make it more at ease. You might want to sit on a chair, a sofa, a bed. You might want to be sitting really straight or perhaps leaning back. And in your own time, when you're comfortable, you can close your eyes. This morning I saw a little video of my teacher's cave, which I've also meditated in. And it's just this dark, soundproofed little hole, little mound, man-made cave, monk-made cave. And even if you don't have such a cave, when you close your eyes, it's as though you are inviting yourself into your own inner cave. And with your eyes closed, you do come in contact with your body. And you can make some adjustments at this point if you wish. I usually find I can give my ankles a bit more space, move them away from the thigh or from the opposite shin. Notice if your buttocks, if the weight is evenly distributed on them, if anything's pinching or pressing. You might want to put a cushion just underneath the back part of your buttocks, the tailbone, to raise your spine slightly. Checking that there's no undue pressure in the knees. For those of you sitting on a chair, it can be helpful to put the ankles just slightly in front of the knees. So that the weight is not on the knees, but can flow down into the ankles, the heels, the soles. And noticing that sense of being grounded. Noticing the parts of the body which are in contact with the ground or with the chair. Allowing that to take your weight. And noticing how this frees up the upper body so that you don't need to hold yourself. The ground, the chair is already holding you. Perhaps the spine can slightly lengthen very gently. You can notice the space at the top of the spine, in the neck between the skull and the spine. Feel into that area. And notice the top of the head and the space above you. So you're both at once grounded and also lifted. Really taking your space. And lastly, just checking your shoulders. You might want to just gently roll them a few times. Especially if you've been working a lot on computers or sitting at home. The shoulders can start to move forward. We lose that spaciousness and start to get hunched. And see if with that adjustment in the shoulders, your hands need to be slightly repositioned. They can be on your knees or in your lap or anywhere else that they're comfortable. Just mentally welcoming yourself, welcoming your body into your mind. Letting the body know that it's in a friendly presence. Perhaps even smiling inwardly. And bringing your attention, if you wish, to follow the guidance to the top of the head. Sensing, receiving any sensations that you notice anywhere on the top of your head. And as your mindfulness makes contact with this part of the body, see if you can infuse that mindfulness with a sense of friendliness and warmth. as though looking upon your body as a very dear, valued friend. You might notice that this kind awareness starts to naturally move through the whole head area, covering every little part of the skull, the scalp. And flowing down onto the forehead, the brow, the eyes, noticing the space in the sockets of the eyes. The cheeks, nose, mouth and jaw. Just noticing if there's any tension in the jaw area or anywhere else in the face, and gently inviting it to relax. Just as a friend would relax and feel safe in your loving company. So too the body relaxes when it feels non-threatened, unjudged, regarded with kindness. Moving this kind awareness through the neck, exploring the whole neck area. Just receiving any sensations there and infusing your awareness with friendship and warmth, with care. Coming to your shoulders, noticing if there's any tension or tightness. Notice how your response influences those sensations. What happens if you tense up? What happens if you just allow those sensations to be? Giving them space, time to unravel and relax. And this kind awareness flows down the arms, including the armpits, the elbows, the lower arms, and your hands. Just noticing any sensations. No need to give them names. And using this opportunity of becoming aware to offer kindness to your arms, your hands, your fingers, fingertips. Allowing them to fully rest. Noticing how they respond. Coming in contact now with your chest area. Exploring the whole chest area. Listening deeply, so to speak, to any sensations there. Checking how your organs are doing. You don't have to visualize or feel them, but just imagining them there. And offering them care, kindness, the opportunity to relax. And noticing for yourself whether it's helpful to explore deep into the body or whether you prefer to stay at the surface. Allowing it to be very natural and spontaneous. You might find some areas require or ask more of your attention, particularly if there's anything, any emotional response. Any discomfort in the abdomen area. I notice if there is a sense of discomfort, it helps to make my awareness even more gentle, as though I'm covering that area with cotton wool. Imagining that energy healing any illness or sickness in any part of the body. When you're ready, spreading this loving awareness through the top of the back, moving through the whole back area, the sides of the body down to the hips. Leaving no part untouched. And coming to the area of the buttocks. The lower parts of the trunk. Offering this kind awareness to this part of the body that probably doesn't receive a lot of care. Moving through the thighs, all around the upper leg, perhaps inside to the muscles, right through to the bones. Allowing this kind awareness to really soak in. Coming to the knees. Treating your knees with warmth, friendship, care. Noticing the effect this has on any sensations you experience there. and covering the shins, the calves, all the way down to the ankles, the soles, the heels, toes. Until no part of this body is untouched by this kind awareness. Now, if you wish, very gently expanding that awareness, widening the sphere to include the whole body sitting. However you experience your body right now. And noticing if there's any part of the body, any sensations there that would appreciate a little more loving attention, a little more care. Whilst holding the whole body in your awareness. Or maybe if there's some part in the body that's still a little tense, see if you can relax that little bit more deeply. As though you were floating in a nice warm lagoon. No holding anywhere. Just at one with the nature. Suspended in a field of loving awareness. Noticing the delight of a relaxed body and a mind that's just woken up a little bit to the nature of this body. How does it feel? So, unfortunately, we're coming to the end of this meditation. You're welcome to carry on if you wish. And just really take your time to gently come out by first thanking your body for offering you this time. How wonderful that you can be here, whether for just this part of the retreat or the whole day. And how beautiful it is that this is what you've chosen to do. You've followed that intention of kindness, compassion, and letting go. So just really appreciating your body and mind. Staying connected to your experience within. And if you wish, gently opening your eyes. So see if when you make that transition from having your eyes closed to open, you can remain connected to that embodied feeling. Sometimes we're drawn out so quickly, but it's possible to have one part of the mind inside and another part out in contact with the world. So, the mornings always go very quickly. Life goes very quickly. And it is time for some walking meditation. So we sort of devised the schedule to give you quite a long break now. I would really encourage you to engage in some walking meditation, even if you feel sort of the urge to get on with other things, because it can be a really beautiful not just in between part of practice, but a part which is really important and strengthens the rest of your practice throughout the day. Especially, as I said, you know, it can be helpful in maintaining that awareness, that continuity of awareness, and bringing it out into your daily life, because most of the time you won't be sitting unless you're working on a computer, but you're probably not sitting in meditation most of the day. And when you are sitting, you're quite busy. But when you're walking, these are often the in-between moments, the moments you have to go to the loo, or the moments that you're walking upstairs or between rooms, maybe the times that you are actually out just on a walk. And so quite often when we're walking, we don't have a lot else to do. So it's a wonderful opportunity to come into contact with your body and to maintain that continuity of mindfulness of the body. Yeah, to be aware, first of all, that I'm walking, or the body is walking. Yeah, so to know what you're doing. And the Buddha said also, not only knowing, but knowing the purpose. So you might be walking from A to B, but in walking meditation, your only purpose is to arrive with every step. Okay, so for those who are new to the walking meditation practice, or to meditation practice in general, the way we normally do this is to have a particular space that we choose for the walking meditation, usually between 7 and 20 steps. I say 7 because that's how big my lounge is. So I'm sure that many of you have, limited space, but even 7 steps can be done with a lot of awareness and mindfulness. And if you are outside, you can have a little bit of a longer stretch. Try and choose somewhere that you're not totally visible, or you'll look like the local weirdo. But sometimes you can find a couple of trees behind, a bush, and take a stretch of a path. And the idea is just to be present to the experience of walking, and to be present to any sensations that you experience as you move your legs and your feet. So it's a nice practice because it's quite natural to be aware of the parts that are moving. You don't have to make a particular special effort for that. So just see how wide your awareness wants to be. Sometimes it's nice to be aware of the whole movement of the leg. Other times the mind wants a little bit more focus, and it's enough just to be aware of the sensations in the feet. So you can practice it even sitting by moving your hand. So for example, if this was one step, you can just notice how your hand feels well, you can't see me. Okay, so this is a surface. So you just notice how it feels to just lift. So you're lifting that heel, there's a sensation in there, and the weight changes, it goes into the front of the foot, and you lift off the foot from the ground, move it along. And then how does it feel when it's coming back down? Which part of the foot touches the ground first? And what are the sensations? Can you notice the feeling of the foot touching the ground and then moving so that the weight comes into the whole foot? Which part does the weight come into first? What are the sensations? Maybe pressure, maybe temperatures involved sometimes, especially if you're outdoors. And then again, how it feels to lift the foot. So it doesn't have to be that slow, but you can find your own way. I usually find that it's a little bit more slow than ordinary walking, but that the pace tends to slow down as my mindfulness increases, because I start to notice more and more sensations, and I want to, really receive all those sensations into my awareness. So it's the same principles as in any other meditation. We're aware, but we're aware in a kind and friendly way, without sort of trying to make our experience one way or the other. You don't have to experience all the sensations in your entire foot. Just be aware of whatever you're aware of, and see if you can find some curiosity and some interest in that. Okay, so my suggestion is that you practice that until about 11:15, or whenever you need to make your lunch. We're going to meet again at 1:30, so there's quite a lot of time. You'll notice on the schedule that I called this walking, cooking, eating and resting meditation. So that is for a purpose, because everything we do, we can do with awareness and kindness. So that's the invitation for you. And it also means that these are all part of the day. So you actually do have to cook and eat, because I want you to all feel nourished and not to skimp on meals. It's really important for meditation and for life that we take care of ourselves. And I find that being on a retreat, I was on a 3-month retreat in my own house, in this little place. It's not really my house, it's the charity's place that we're renting for our charitable purposes. But I was here alone for 3 whole months, and normally as a monastic we would be offered a cooked meal, but I had to cook for myself. So I embraced that opportunity. I actually am quite creative, and I sort of miss those parts, those creative parts of myself sometimes. So it was actually really nice, and also a great opportunity to care for myself in a different kind of way. So I made the decision, to cook nicely. I could have cooked as fast as possible, but I chose to cook as nutritionally and deliciously as possible as well. So it's actually possible to make a really nice meal within about 45 minutes. So do take that time if you can, and if you're lucky enough to have, vegetables and whatever else in your fridge. And notice the experience of eating as well. when you do regard eating as a way to care and nourish your body and mind. So eating with gratitude and eating with the intention to nourish yourself, in this case for the sake of the practice. So the whole day can become your meditation retreat. Okay, I guess normally I would ask if there's any questions just to make sure that everything's been understood. Could I ask for you to only ask a question at this point if you're confused about anything? And if it's just something quick, because we're a little bit over time. If you do have a question or confusion, yes, I can see Sophie has